I got fired by a clueless boss who didn't know I hold a system patent. The words echoed in my mind like a broken record as I sat in my car, staring at the building where I'd invested 5 years of my life. It was Monday morning, the kind of morning that usually filled me with purpose and drive. But today, instead of walking through those glass doors with my usual determination, I found myself gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. The meeting had been brief, clinical, and utterly baffling. Mr. Thompson, my so-called visionary boss, had called me into his office first thing this morning. His sterile corner room, adorned with motivational posters that seemed more ironic than inspiring, had become the stage for my professional execution. He'd cleared his throat, adjusted his $1,000 tie, and informed me that my services were no longer required. Just like that. What made it even more surreal was how he'd stumbled over his words, clearly uncomfortable but resolute in his decision. "It's not a reflection on your work," he'd said, avoiding eye contact. "We're just streamlining operations." The irony was almost too much to bear. Streamlining operations? This from a man who couldn't tell you the difference between a firewall and a fire drill, yet presided over our technology department like some sort of tech deity. As I replayed the conversation in my head, I noticed something peculiar, the way his eyes had darted away whenever I mentioned innovation or system improvements. It wasn't just discomfort, it was ignorance. Pure, unadulterated ignorance. Here I was, holding a patent for a system that could revolutionize our entire industry, and my own boss didn't even know about it. Or worse, didn't care. The patent had been my baby, born from countless late nights and weekends spent poring over code and engineering solutions. It wasn't just another piece of intellectual property, it represented everything I believed about pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. Yet, in that moment when I needed support most, when I needed someone to understand the value of what I'd created, I faced nothing but blank stares and pre-written termination scripts. Sitting there in my car, I realized something else. This wasn't just about losing a job. It was about being dismissed by someone who fundamentally didn't grasp the significance of what they were dismissing. My mind drifted back to all the times I tried to explain my ideas during team meetings, only to be met with polite nods and empty promises to look into it later. Later had never come, and now it never would. The parking lot began to fill up around me as other employees arrived, blissfully unaware of the drama that had unfolded in the executive suite. They moved with their usual Monday morning energy, coffees in hand, chatting about their weekends. To them, everything was normal. Another week at the office. Another chance to climb the corporate ladder. But for me, the ladder had just been yanked out from under me, and I was still processing the fall. I thought about walking back in there, patent papers in hand, and showing Mr. Thompson exactly what he was throwing away. But what would be the point? The decision had already been made. The machine had churned forward, oblivious to the individual cogs it had ground down along the way. Instead, I found myself wondering how different things might have been if my boss had actually understood the value of what I'd created. If he'd recognized that sometimes, true innovation comes from within your own ranks, not from expensive consultants or flashy presentations. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Other cars honked their hellos as colleagues pulled into their spaces. Someone waved at me through their windshield, probably wondering why I hadn't come in yet. I forced a smile and waved back, feeling the weight of my situation pressing down on me like a physical force. 5 years. That's how long I'd been at Innovatech Solutions. 5 years of early mornings, late nights, and weekend work sessions that had blurred the lines between dedication and obsession. When I first joined the company, fresh out of MIT with stars in my eyes and code in my veins, I truly believed we were going to change the world. Our mission statement promised innovation, progress, and a commitment to pushing technological boundaries. At least, that's what they told us during orientation. Looking back, I can see how naive I was. The reality of corporate life quickly set in, revealing itself in layers like peeling back the skin of an onion. What started as excitement slowly transformed into frustration as I watched promising ideas get shelved, brilliant minds grow disillusioned, and genuine opportunities for advancement get squandered. The company's culture wasn't one of innovation, it was one of preservation. Preserve the status quo. Preserve the hierarchy. Preserve the illusion of progress while maintaining comfortable profit margins. My journey through these layers was marked by small victories and major disappointments. I remember the first time I presented my initial concept for what would eventually become my patented system. It was during one of our quarterly innovation sessions, essentially glorified brainstorming meetings where executives would nod approvingly at carefully curated presentations. My idea was simple yet revolutionary: create a dynamic feedback loop between user experience data and system architecture modification protocols. In layman's terms, build a system that could evolve based on real-time user needs without requiring complete overhauls every few months. The response was telling. My immediate supervisor, Sarah, had loved it. Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement, and she encouraged me to develop a prototype. But when we took the idea to the next level, to the upper management team, the reaction was different. Polite smiles. Non-committal phrases. "Let's table this for future discussion," became our unofficial motto. The message was clear: good ideas were welcome as long as they didn't disrupt existing power structures or require significant investment in anything beyond marketing campaigns. Despite this, I pressed on. Working late nights in the lab, collaborating with like-minded colleagues who shared my vision, I slowly built out the system. We called it Evolvix, a portmanteau of evolve and matrix that perfectly captured its essence. The breakthrough came when we integrated machine learning algorithms with adaptive interface protocols, creating a system that could literally redesign itself based on user behavior patterns. It wasn't just efficient, it was predictive. It anticipated needs before users even knew they had them. Getting the patent approved was both a triumph and a bittersweet moment. On one hand, it validated everything I'd worked for. On the other, it highlighted the growing disconnect between what the company claimed to value and what it actually supported. I remember sitting in the legal department's conference room, signing the final documents, while the patent attorney excitedly explained how this could position Innovatech Solutions as a leader in adaptive technology. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, I knew better. The system's potential applications were vast. From streamlining customer service interfaces to revolutionizing data management protocols, Evolvix could touch every aspect of our operations. Yet every time I tried to present it to the executive team, I encountered the same barriers. Budget constraints, resource limitations, market readiness concerns. The excuses changed, but the result remained the same: gentle dismissal wrapped in corporate speak. What hurt most wasn't the rejection itself. Any innovator knows that's part of the game. It was the casual disregard for genuine improvement. The preference for quick fixes over foundational change. The celebration of surface-level metrics over meaningful progress. I watched as millions were poured into marketing campaigns promoting cutting-edge technology, while actual cutting-edge technology gathered dust in server rooms and forgotten folders. Through it all, I maintained my position as lead systems architect, hoping that persistence would eventually pay off. I believed that if I could just prove the system's value through small-scale implementations, the higher-ups would come around. So I worked tirelessly, implementing Evolvix in limited capacities where I could, collecting data, documenting successes. Each success felt like a small victory against the tide of corporate inertia. But each victory also made the ultimate rejection sting that much more. The irony wasn't lost on me that my greatest professional achievement, the patent that could have redefined our company's future, had become the very thing that highlighted its deepest flaws. Here I was, holding intellectual property that could transform our industry, working for people who valued appearances over substance, marketing over innovation, and short-term gains over long-term growth. Now, sitting in my car, I realized that my termination wasn't just about cutting costs or restructuring teams. It was the logical conclusion of a system that rewarded conformity over creativity, maintenance over momentum, and hierarchy over merit. And the saddest part? They didn't even know what they were losing. The email notification buzzed on my phone, breaking through my thoughts like an alarm clock shattering a dream. It was from HR, confirming my termination package details. As I scanned the formal language, transition assistance, severance package, outplacement services, I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between this impersonal communication and the human reality of my situation. Here I was, reduced to bullet points and checkboxes, while inside I felt like a storm was raging. Then came the second email, this one from Sarah. My former supervisor, who had always supported my work, wrote with genuine concern, "I'm so sorry about this morning. I tried to argue against it, but, well, you know how things work here. Let me know if you need anything." Her words carried the weight of someone who understood the absurdity of the situation but felt powerless to change it. The attachment she included, a detailed report showing how Evolvix had improved efficiency by 42% in the departments where we'd managed to implement it, felt like a cruel joke now. My phone vibrated again, this time with a text from Jake, my best friend since college. Heard about your day. Want to grab lunch? His timing was perfect, though I wondered who had spilled the news already. Word traveled fast in corporate circles, especially bad news. Before I could respond, another text popped up from Maria, a colleague from the R&D department. Are you okay? We're all talking about this. Totally unfair. The messages kept coming, some offering support, others expressing outrage, all painting a picture of a workplace reacting to my departure. What struck me most was the dichotomy between these personal responses and the official company stance. While HR treated my termination like a routine administrative task, my colleagues saw it for what it really was, a fundamental failure of leadership. Their reactions weren't just sympathy, they were validation. Validation that my work mattered, that Evolvix had real value, and that the company's decision was as short-sighted as it was unjust. I opened LinkedIn on my phone, half expecting to see some official announcement about my departure. Instead, I found something far more telling. Several former colleagues had already reached out with connection requests and private messages. One ex-employee, who had left under similar circumstances 2 years ago, wrote, "Welcome to the club. You'll see soon enough that this might be the best thing that ever happened to you." His words resonated deeply, carrying the wisdom of someone who had walked this path before me. As I scrolled through my feed, I noticed something else. Multiple posts from current employees praising Evolvix's impact on their work, carefully worded to avoid violating company policies but clear in their meaning. Some shared screenshots of performance metrics, others posted testimonials about how the system had streamlined their processes. It was a quiet rebellion, conducted in the digital space where corporate control couldn't reach. The notifications kept coming, each one adding another layer to my emotional state. Anger at the injustice of it all. Gratitude for the support network that was emerging. Anxiety about the future. But most surprisingly, a growing sense of liberation. For years, I had been playing by the rules of a game rigged against genuine innovation. Now suddenly, I wasn't bound by those rules anymore. A call from my mother interrupted my thoughts. She had somehow heard the news, probably through her extensive network of friends who worked in HR departments across the city. Her voice was filled with concern but also something else, pride. "Honey, this is terrible timing, but maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You've been talking about wanting more freedom to work on your projects for years now." Her words caught me off guard. Freedom. The concept felt foreign yet appealing. As I responded to messages and fielded calls, I noticed a pattern emerging in people's reactions. Those who had worked closely with me on Evolvix projects expressed outrage and disbelief. Middle management types offered cautious support, careful not to burn bridges. But the most telling responses came from senior executives' assistants, cryptic messages hinting at internal conflicts about my termination. It seemed that even among the higher-ups, opinions weren't unanimous. The media notifications added another dimension to the situation. Tech blogs had picked up wind of the story, though details were still sketchy. One reporter from TechCrunch messaged me directly, asking for comment on rumors about a prominent developer being let go despite holding crucial patents. I hesitated before responding, realizing that my private struggle was rapidly becoming public knowledge. Each interaction, each message, each notification painted a clearer picture of the landscape I now found myself in. It wasn't just about losing a job, it was about discovering where true alliances lay. About understanding that the value of my work extended far beyond the walls of Innovatech Solutions. About recognizing that sometimes, being fired isn't the end of a chapter, it's the beginning of a new book. I turned off my phone, needing a moment to process everything. The digital world had provided clarity, but it had also amplified the complexity of my emotions. Anger at the injustice. Gratitude for the support. Excitement about possibilities. Fear of the unknown. They all swirled together, creating a cocktail of feelings that defied simple categorization. What was certain, however, was that this wasn't just my story anymore. It had become part of a larger narrative about innovation, corporate culture, and the price of progress. The hours passed in a blur of conflicting emotions and mounting realizations. As I sat there in my car, staring at the familiar building that had once represented opportunity but now stood as a monument to missed chances, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just anger or frustration anymore, though those emotions still burned brightly. Something deeper was taking root, something that felt suspiciously like hope masquerading as indignation. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. My former bosses, in their infinite wisdom, had taken a brilliant mind with proven innovative capability and removed all their constraints. No more navigating corporate bureaucracy. No more fighting for resources. No more worrying about stepping on executive toes or waiting for approval from people who couldn't distinguish between blockchain and a firewall. For the first time in years, I was free. The thought was intoxicating. All those late nights spent coding, all those weekends sacrificed for perfecting Evolvix, all those moments of doubt when I questioned whether my ideas were worth pursuing, they suddenly crystallized into absolute certainty. I wasn't just holding a patent, I was holding a ticket to reshape an entire industry. The system I had created wasn't just valuable, it was revolutionary. And now, without the shackles of corporate politics, I could finally unleash its full potential. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising in its intensity. How deliciously ironic that my termination, meant to streamline operations and cut costs, might actually accelerate the very changes they had been trying to suppress. The image of Mr. Thompson sitting in his corner office, congratulating himself on his cost-cutting measures, while completely unaware of the Pandora's box he had just opened, was almost too perfect. My mind raced with possibilities. Without the constraints of company policy, I could implement Evolvix in ways that had previously been impossible. I could partner with forward-thinking organizations that actually valued innovation. I could assemble a team of like-minded visionaries who wouldn't have to fight for every resource or justify every bold idea. The system that had been gathering dust in server rooms could now spread its wings and show the world what true adaptive technology looked like. The fear that had initially gripped me began to transform into something else entirely. It wasn't just about proving my former bosses wrong, though that certainly added fuel to the fire. It was about recognizing that sometimes, the greatest opportunities come disguised as setbacks. They say necessity is the mother of invention, but perhaps adversity is the catalyst for true innovation. My termination wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. A chance to build something bigger, better, and completely unconstrained by corporate limitations. The messages from colleagues and industry contacts took on new meaning. What had initially felt like expressions of sympathy now read like invitations to collaborate. The connections I had forged over years of working within the system could now serve as the foundation for something entirely new. The tech world was smaller than people realized, and reputation mattered more than any official title. My work on Evolvix had earned me respect and credibility, assets far more valuable than any corner office or company car. As I considered the road ahead, I realized that my former employers had underestimated something crucial. The power of true innovation doesn't lie in ownership or control. It lies in adoption and implementation. Even if they thought they could bury Evolvix by terminating me, they failed to understand that ideas, once released into the world, take on lives of their own. The seeds I had planted during my time at Innovatech Solutions were already growing roots in fertile ground. Colleagues who had seen the system's potential would carry its influence with them, whether they stayed at the company or moved on to new opportunities. The laugh returned, this time accompanied by a surge of adrenaline. How beautifully poetic that the very system designed to adapt and evolve had been given its greatest opportunity for growth through my termination. Evolvix had always been about transformation, about creating systems that could learn, adapt, and improve based on real-world needs. Now, its creator was experiencing that same transformative process firsthand. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, but they no longer felt ominous. Instead, they seemed to point toward a future filled with possibilities. Every notification on my phone, every message of support, every expression of outrage from colleagues felt like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The corporate world had tried to confine my innovation within neat boxes and predictable frameworks. But true innovation, like water, always finds a way through the cracks. Sitting there in my car, I began to see my termination not as a defeat, but as a strategic advantage. The company had effectively removed all obstacles between me and the full realization of Evolvix's potential. No more fighting through layers of bureaucracy. No more explaining complex technical concepts to executives who measured success in quarterly reports rather than systemic improvements. The system that had been held back by corporate caution could now move forward with entrepreneurial speed and agility. Perhaps the most satisfying realization was that my former bosses had unwittingly handed me the greatest gift an innovator could receive: complete freedom to pursue excellence without compromise. They had fired someone holding a system patent, thinking they were cutting costs and streamlining operations. Instead, they had created the perfect conditions for that system to thrive and revolutionize the industry they claimed to lead. The irony was so rich, so complete, that it bordered on comedic. As I prepared to leave the parking lot, I glanced one last time at the building where I had spent 5 years of my life. The glass facade reflected the setting sun, making it look almost beautiful. Almost. But behind those shiny windows, I knew, were people still trapped in their offices, still fighting the same battles I had fought, still trying to push innovation through channels designed to suppress it. They would continue their dance with corporate politics, while I stepped onto a different stage altogether. The engine roared to life beneath me, and for the first time all day, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Monday mornings would never be the same again. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. I rented a small office space in a co-working hub downtown, its exposed brick walls and buzzing energy a stark contrast to the sterile corporate environment I'd left behind. For the first time in years, I felt alive with purpose, not the kind dictated by quarterly goals or performance reviews, but the raw, unfiltered drive to create something meaningful. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from former colleagues offering support, some even hinting at joining me if I decided to build something new. The groundswell of encouragement was overwhelming, yet invigorating. I spent my first week mapping out a plan. Evolvix wasn't just a system anymore, it was a movement waiting to happen. Freed from the constraints of bureaucracy, I envisioned its potential expanding far beyond what Innovatech Solutions had ever imagined. I reached out to trusted collaborators, people who had worked alongside me late into the nights, pouring their hearts into the project only to see it shelved. To my surprise, many were eager to jump on board. "We've been waiting for this," one of them said during our first brainstorming session. "Now we can finally do it right." It didn't take long for word to spread. Within 2 weeks, I received an email from a venture capitalist named Rachel Kim. She had seen the rumors online and wanted to meet. Her firm specialized in funding disruptive technologies, and she believed Evolvix could be exactly that, a game changer. Sitting across from her in a sleek conference room, I laid out my vision: adaptive systems that didn't just respond to user needs but anticipated them, creating seamless experiences that would redefine industries. By the end of the pitch, Rachel leaned back in her chair, smiling. "You're not just building software," she said. "You're rewriting the rules." With seed funding secured, things moved quickly. We assembled a lean team of brilliant minds, each bringing their unique expertise to the table. There were no rigid hierarchies here, no endless approval processes. Ideas flowed freely, and decisions were made based on merit, not politics. It was exhilarating and exhausting. Late nights became the norm again, but this time, there was no bitterness. Every line of code, every breakthrough, felt like a step toward something greater. Meanwhile, whispers of our progress began to reach Innovatech Solutions. At first, it was subtle, a former colleague mentioning how morale had plummeted after my departure, another noting that projects once driven by Evolvix were now struggling without it. Then came the moment when reality hit home for my old bosses. A major client, frustrated with stagnation, approached us directly. They had heard about Evolvix's capabilities and wanted to partner exclusively. When news of the deal leaked, panic rippled through Innovatika's executive suite. Suddenly, they realized the magnitude of what they had lost. Mr. Thompson tried to reach out. His email was polite, almost apologetic, asking for a meeting to discuss potential synergies. I deleted it without responding. This wasn't about revenge, it was about proving that true innovation thrives outside the confines of fear and complacency. Still, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The man who had dismissed me as expendable was now scrambling to understand the very thing he had failed to value. As months turned into a year, Evolvix transformed from a prototype into a fully fledged platform. Its applications spanned industries, from healthcare to finance, revolutionizing how organizations interacted with data and users. Awards poured in, media coverage skyrocketed, and investors clamored to get involved. But the most rewarding part wasn't the accolades or the financial success, it was seeing the impact. Companies that adopted Evolvix reported unprecedented efficiency gains, employees found their work more fulfilling, and customers experienced services tailored precisely to their needs. One evening, as I stood on the balcony of our new headquarters overlooking the city skyline, I reflected on how far we'd come. The journey hadn't been easy. There were moments of doubt, sleepless nights, and tough decisions. But through it all, I had stayed true to the core belief that drove me from the start. Innovation isn't about playing it safe. It's about pushing boundaries, challenging norms, and daring to imagine a better future. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Jake, the friend who had offered lunch on that fateful Monday morning. "Hey genius," his message read. "Just saw the latest numbers. Congrats. Told you getting fired might be the best thing that ever happened to you." I laughed, typing back, "Yeah, guess you were right. Dinner's on me tonight." As I put my phone down, I thought about Mr. Thompson and the others who had underestimated me. In a way, I owed them thanks. Their ignorance had set me free, forcing me to trust in my abilities and embrace the unknown. What they saw as termination, I now understood as liberation, a chance to break free from limitations and build something extraordinary. The city lights twinkled below, a tapestry of possibilities stretching endlessly before me. Mondays would never feel the same again, not because they marked the start of another workweek, but because they symbolized opportunity. Opportunity to innovate, to inspire, to change the world. And as I turned to head back inside, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning.